Okay, Travis, I'm going to intro you because there's a lot of people on my network that is on very interesting sides of the spectrums. I have people in like global Fortune 500 kind of world that's like all across the freaking world. And they're incredible advertisers, which means that they're really huge with brands and such. Really large companies, which you are not a stranger with at all. And on top of that, then I have this other side of my world that's like startups, mentorship, a lot of technical founders. And I think there's just something there. So Travis McPeak, you are a serial entrepreneur, an active CEO, a founder, angel investor, and a security leader. Your primary organization as an active CEO and co-founder is Resourcely, backed up by VC firms Andreessen, Horowitz, and Felicis, and backed up by a quadrillion of security leaders from Netflix, Twitter, Twilio, Heroku, Brex, Sentinel One, Coinbase, Riot Games, HashiCorp, Temporal, CodeRed, and so much more. You are also an angel investor backing up 12 early stage startups in security since 2021, starting with Monad, Cider Security, Truffle Security, Permiso Security, Depot, Conductor One, Sweet Security, Cylon Lean, and most recently, Gnostic. You've worked your way through corporate as head of product security at Databricks, leading a team as cloud security engineer at Netflix, security architect at HP Helion, and both public and private cloud platforms, and starting in the early days at Symantec. Did I miss anything?
Yeah, that's some of the angel investments, but yeah, good enough.
We both share a deep passion in enterprise-grade security, so let's talk about how you talk about it. So the first question is, what motivated you to start investing in your personal brand?
Yeah, I think personal brand is always an unlock for whatever you want to do in the world. I do a lot of mentoring, and I will tell those folks, hey, there's a couple of ways to get a job. You can go put your resume in the big stack where there's going to be hundreds of said resumes or maybe even more. And that's the hard way to get in. The easy way to get in is you build friendships with people that work at companies that you'd like to work at. And then when they have a job open, they think about you, and then you go through the side door. So that's where it starts. It's helpful, even if you're not doing a company. When you're doing a startup, it's probably even more important because nobody knows who your company is yet. And getting the conversations that you want to have is going to be in part driven by, do people know who you are, and are they willing to take your phone call out of the blue?
Yeah. And what was the turning point for you where you're like, oh, I have to double down here? Was there something that was that aha light bulb moment for you where you're like, oh shit, I need to do more of this?
Yeah, probably back in 2015, 2016, I looked around at the security leaders that I was aware of, that I really respected, and thought one thing that they had that I didn't is a good public presence. And so I became interested in it then. That led to some conference talks. Once I started doing that, the flywheel of good things started happening. And I realized that there's something here. The more of this you do, the more people will know who you are, the more opportunities you get. And so really decided to become next good at public presenting and making sure that when I tried to convey a message, people understood and wanted to consume that message.
I love it. And so did you start off as just speaking first and then you got into writing, or was it like writing first and then speaking? Like what were you most what did it feel natural to actually push through those barriers of like unfamiliarity of having a public presence, especially coming as an engineer?
You know, what's interesting is none of them felt natural at first for me. Writing feels hard. You know, it's possible to just polish it, and it's never good enough. What I realized is that just getting something that you're happy with and not trying to polish it indefinitely is good. First time I was public speaking, I felt super nervous, like everybody does. It's an awkward thing to do. What I realize is the more you do of it, the easier it gets. And so now when I'm speaking in public, I don't get nervous at all. I actually get a little bit excited from it.
Oh, and how did you change the frequency on it where it wasn't just like once in the blue moon? You're like, hey, I need to put this on the schedule. I need to actually make space for this, like every week or whatever the cadence was for you to ramp up to the level of activity that you do today.
Yeah, so I might not be doing it optimally here. I think people that are really good at it have a cadence. and they say, I'm going to do something every week or every day or whatever. For me, it's more about when I feel like I have something interesting to say, and then I will come up with the right format to do that in. So it could be written, it could be a blog post, it could be a talk, and it really just depends on how much interesting stuff I have to say. Is it the kind of thing that I can fit in 1,000 words, or does it need 45 minutes?
Exactly. I mean, like, even for advertisers, the best ideas come from like when you're in the toilet, like in the bathroom. You're like, okay, that's it, and then you just go off into the races.
Yep.
All right. How do you see personal branding as an investment for long-term growth rather than just an expense?
Yeah. I think it's an investment. That's right. Because you're not going to get immediate good things that you want to have happening from it. Usually, sometimes that happens. If you produce something that catches fire, then you could get new opportunities from it. But it's really, it's like a plant that you water. You just give it a little bit of water every day, and then eventually it becomes something nice. That's more the way that I see it. Now that I've invested in the skills to do it myself and feel comfortable with it, now it's a tool that I have in my tool belt.
Do you feel like that kind of comes from your background of like building and being able to stack efforts, that you understand that?
It could be. Yeah, I think that anything that's worth having takes a long time to get there, and you only have so many of those shots to fire. So you want to make sure that you're investing in the right things, because if you try to become good at 1,000 things, you're going to not be good at any of them. But based on wherever somebody's going in their career, there's certain skills that really do make sense. And so communication, I think anybody in professional world, communication makes a lot of sense.
Right. And what would you say to especially early stage founders who may, there's one thing about that personal growth part of like, oh shit, I have to actually stand up and like talk about myself. I love how you're like, I can talk about myself for 3 minutes straight, sitting like, perfect. But like, for you to get to that point and then also then bring in about like the startup and about the company and be like, actually time has to be spent here. This is worth our time, and how you lead that back to all of the stuff that you do. So like all the content of like your next events or your product releases, or, even talking about your changelog or all these other collaborations that you're doing, and you're finding that, oh wow, socializing this actually helps me to put myself in the forefront as a leader. But not only that they see us like, wow, we are really building something that is meaningful, and it actually is helping them.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm going to want to reach out to people and frankly sell them Resourcely. And the hardest way to do that, again, going to the job application thing, would be I reach out of the blue, cold email. They have no idea who I am, or a cold call. That's awful. Nobody likes to do that, but that is a lot of how business is done. Next easiest thing would be I get a warm intro from somebody. So chances are, with investment that I've made in my personal brand at this point, and just relationships in general, I probably know somebody that works around the place that I'm trying to get to. And then I can go and say, hey, this is what I'd like to talk about. This is the type of person I want to talk to. Do you know who they are? And would you be willing to intro for me? Same thing with Resourcely though. So Resourcely, in the beginning, nobody knows who it is, right? Or what it is, because it's brand new. And so we brought Chris, our product marketing leader, earlier this year, and Chris has done a really good job of just this regular drumbeat of content talking about Resourcely, what it can do, what the benefits are. And so that, I think, builds on itself. Now as opposed to say 12 months ago, we're getting people that we've never talked to that come to our website and are aware of the product, and will take the steps to learn more. So I think it's both kind of things, personal and company. You have to do the same steps.
And was there ever a time that you actually showed your screen when you were walking them through, for example, and you used that as a tool of all the pages that you've built and such?
Yeah, I will do that kind of stuff. I think it really just depends, again, on, like, to the message that I'm trying to get across and who needs to hear it. So typically showing everything is tough. What I try to do when I'm having these conversations is identify, who the person is, what they care about, and really just take the time to learn. I was looking at something online earlier, and I saw Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street, and somebody asked him, "Sell me this pen," which is the famous line that he used with the company. Yeah. And he said inexperienced salespeople will come and tell you all the attributes of the pen and why you should care about it. And what the good salespeople do is start asking questions like, what do you care about? Why does a pen matter to you? Do you want a cheap one or a good one? Like that kind of stuff. And so I try to do that up front, and then that lets me cater the message that I'm showing folks when I meet with them. If they don't care about certain areas, I'm not going to waste my time showing them about those. If they do care about certain areas, I'm just going to go straight to that and show how we might be able to help them.
Right. And then now that you have like an empire of content, you now know what you can follow up with them and nurture that. And yet again, watering that whole, I guess, like pipeline as well. And, segment them as well of like, okay, these people kind of really care about this problem. I'm going to talk to them more about this and give them value in that respect. And then these folks kind of, maybe I can talk to them more about this feature and they would actually buy just because of this feature.
Yep, exactly. And it's all about learning, talking to folks. You start to, over time, be able to categorize like, oh, even if I don't know you, you're probably going to be interested in this kind of thing based on the job you do, the type of profile you're in. So getting those. And the other thing, the content is useful in itself because we found we were sending regular follow-ups, the same kind of stuff every time. It's like, just get those on the website. Like, make it so anybody can discover those. Now we have quick links that we can drop to have the same conversation.
It makes you more efficient, right? You would think that that wasn't the case beforehand, but sometimes it takes the upfront work to then actually really move the sales process along.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you just for understanding that. So I'm just like, okay. What's one piece of advice you give technical founders who are hesitant to start building their brand? Like they just can't take the leap yet. And they're like, oh man, I'm just gonna, maybe do it next year, New Year's resolution kind of thing. Or, you have done so many reps that I feel like you just kind of punched every single freaking barrier. And I don't know if that was your time with, the environment that you're in from corporate, or it was really through the startup side, or you knowing both sides on the table, because that's what makes you very unique, by the way, is being an active CEO, that role, and understand that you have to delegate at the same time. Like you're also, representing as well. You're repping every single day. And then from the investor side of it, it's understanding why you're investing in the first place and what you're expecting as well. And it's just incredible. Sorry, I just really love that. So can you speak to what's the one piece of advice you give technical founders who are hesitant to start building their brand?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons that people might feel hesitant. So first of all, I think all humans have this kind of fear of rejection. Putting yourself out there, people, it's the internet. People might say bad things. People might not like what you produce. So you just have to get over that. It's as simple as that. You can start with baby steps, but who cares? People out there, if you're authentic, people out there will appreciate what you're saying. And sure, people aren't going to like you, or they're not going to like what you wrote or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. And I think if you don't do that, if you don't build a brand, then you're going to fail anyway. So I think people should really think if they're the kind of person that can put themselves out there. It's super awkward with a startup, right? You have this product that you love, and people might come and say your baby's ugly, and you just have to be able to deal with that. The other reason people might not get started is it feels like a lot of work. It's like, okay, well, we need to do, these 30 things. I don't have time for all of that, but just start somewhere. And the nice part about that is you can start to get feedback. Like, what kind of stuff do people like? We've definitely experimented with different kinds of content, and we are pretty rigorous about looking at the analytics on that and seeing what do people actually engage with, and it didn't work. That's fine. You can have experiments, things that don't work. Every time you do one of those, you learn something.
Yeah. And so with your investor hat on real quick, I think with early stage startups, it's very hard because you as an angel investor, you can really see just like that whole friends and family side. And then, it expands their network just a little bit, it becomes like a cafeteria. Like you see the same people every day. It's kind of like, RSA or something, like industry events where you're like, okay, how do I deal with this? And you don't want to like fall on your face and such. And so how do you mentor and provide the advisory of like, it's okay because anyways, the reason why I invested in you is to multiply. It's not just the folks that it's also new territories. It's the uncharted side of it. It's the adventurous of finding a better match and finding a better fit that really respects and values, the product features that you put all this fucking time in, honestly, to make sure that it actually solves a problem, one, and two, it can actually be adopted across the whole entire organization, that no matter what, no one's gonna kill the deal, whether you're in IT, finance, like the CFO, or legal, for example, when it's in procurement. So how would you give that advisory for someone who needs to just take that leap?
Yeah. So one thing I've learned about investing, I used to go more on you're a brilliant technical founder and you'll figure out the business side. And now I go more of the opposite. you're a really good business executor and you'll figure out the technical parts. I think if I talk to you, I don't know you yet. I talk to you, you pitch your business idea. If it's not clear to me, then it's going to be really hard because you're trying to convince people to take a bet on something that's early, that might solve something in a way that hasn't been solved before. If you can't communicate that effectively, it's just going to be uphill for you the whole time. So
Yeah.
I do look for that now. I don't think there is such a thing as, a product that can just clear all obstacles. There's a lot of you need to build relationships, again, internal to the organization, make sure that you have a champion, that champion knows how to talk about you, go and meet the stakeholders, the folks that actually need to sign off, get their trust. So there's a lot of that. And if you can't do it in a low pressure, first call with a small angel investor, you might learn that skill, but I think learning that skill from scratch is going to be hard.
And what would you say to founders who do founder-led sales, who there's a revolving door for product champions, especially in the marketplace today, especially in this kind of economy where, you're like, oh shit, I just invested all this time. But how do you advise for founders to, I guess, create almost like a resource center so that it can be, there's a handover in effect where just like in corporate, we would do handovers anyways, because hiring and firing can happen any other day. It can happen whenever. You can't really bet on that. Okay, this product champion is going to be with me forever. But if you're able to onboard them in a way that they, on their last day, for example, because you held that relationship, that they would be able to onboard the next person and be able to continue that relationship.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you can talk to on there that would help people?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, okay, we sold this, it's done. That's only half of it. You need to make sure that they're successful, they're getting value. If you're getting enough value, you're going to be sticky in a company, but you still have to stay on top of it. Who's moving around the organization, who's coming and going. Those things are very important. So in cases where we've been successful, we try to make as many close relationships as possible within the team that we're working with. And then we know when things are happening and they don't just happen to us and they're come by surprise.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to distribution, marcom strategies, and channels. So we talked about the self thingamabobber and putting yourself out there. So what's your relationship with LinkedIn versus other platforms to reach your audience?
Yeah, I really like LinkedIn. So we're continuously experimenting with stuff. Shout out to Chris, product marketing person. He's got a lot of experience here. But we found LinkedIn to be the most successful. We're trying to build our company LinkedIn brand, so doing regular content there. That said, I have more connections on my personal than I do with the company. And so what I try to do, people are so allergic to what's obviously just straight product sales. You don't want to do that. You want to come out with something valuable, something they can learn, something you can teach them. And then with that, of course, you're again building your personal brand and building the company brand. So I really like LinkedIn for that kind of stuff. We try to make, again, the website the source of truth for everything. So if we're explaining some concept, even on LinkedIn, we want that to link back so people can come and find more.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting is organic versus paid media, and taking that framework, and the same with your personal LinkedIn versus your company. And I love the content that you do because you're very direct. You say things in a very simple way, and you don't really have this filter of the professionalism is in the craft that you do, and you know what you're talking about. And that's what makes you a subject matter expert in what you do. And then that's why you're building this whole company and all that stuff. But, the slides that I've seen from you, and that's what really caught my eye beforehand. I was like, this is so much fun. You're talking to security leaders, you're breaking things down. And anyone who's listening, you have to look at Travis's YouTube. It is the best. And so yeah, I went through all your stuff. But it's the reps that you did and how you simplify and do the storytelling. And I think that is kind of where I love how you merge that together on LinkedIn. And if someone's interested, they know how to use the internet, they know how to click through, and I think that's kind of where people don't understand, if I want to make it seem more professional or rigid or direct sales, that's a fucking ad. That's why LinkedIn have ads, and it retargets to those people kind of thing. And you can separate because they are in the context and mindset of that's an ad, for example, versus, what Travis says, every day kind of thing. And I think that's the difference of like organic versus paid. But I think some people, they kind of try to push it all together. And then the tone of it, which is your persona, it kind of like, it's unsure, right? And then it comes off almost like not as authentic, or like, oh, okay, he's being kind of salesy kind of, but you don't do that. And so I really want to highlight that about you. And I want everyone to like go through your LinkedIn, like your YouTube and everything.
I definitely haven't cracked this. I think there's always stuff to learn, but I think people have just gotten so allergic to button down business speak. People know that they're not being told the direct truth, or there's stuff being held back, or the messaging's too flowery. What I try to do is just speak authentic. And, like I said, I'm sure some people don't like it, but it works for me. It makes me feel proud to put out the stuff that I do. And then there are folks that like that style of communication. I think everyone's got to come up with their own style, though.
How did you find out your checklist before you are to post something, for example? Like, did you find out over time, like, okay, this aligns with this strategic bucket that I'm doing, this is okay if like there's some mistakes here or whatever, but it still aligns with the overall, mission or what I'm talking about, or the messaging strategy of my own persona that I'm gonna like hammer on and on and on? Like, have you been able to compartmentalize that naturally, or you put some real good work in?
So most of the stuff for the company, that's all Chris. So Chris, I think, is better at this stuff than I am. For me, I don't worry too much about, again, I think people can set these arbitrary gates for themselves where it's like, oh, I'm not going to put anything out unless I've triple reviewed it and there's no typos and I have other people look at it. And I don't know, I'm willing to tolerate having typos. I think it's more important for me to just put out good content and like for myself, and not have that much of a bar to doing it. If I find it's a big chore, then I'm just gonna always be too busy.
So exactly. So everyone who's listening, it would be, if you were to start today, right? Just start.
Yeah, just do something. Yeah, come up with whatever you think your like 5 best ideas are that other people don't know about. Remember, it has to be valuable. It can be obvious stuff. It has to be your unique perspective, something you've learned the hard way, whatever. And then just do it. There's better tools than we've ever had before. You can describe in 5 sentences whatever you're thinking about to GPT. It'll produce something that could be your starting place. You can go edit it, make it in your voice, and the whole thing's going to be faster than it would have been in the old days without GPT.
100%. So how has your personal brand influenced traffic engagement on your company's website? I know we touched on this just a little bit earlier, but how did you see that progress over time, because you've been doing so much of the work and you've been so consistent? It's kind of incredible. So I'm very intrigued to hear about that.
Even before the website, so when we were just getting started, we didn't even have a website yet. I wanted to go and talk to people and learn what they cared about, what their pain points were. So I used my network first for that. I wanted to just have, when I started the company, I set a goal, 45 relevant conversations with people that would be the kind of buyer for this, even though we didn't have a product yet, in 45 days. So the network was very helpful there. We have this regular now drumbeat of cadence that we put out for things that we think are going to be valuable. Every time we do a good one of those, then we see the traffic spike. But I think it's like, why does Pepsi do Super Bowl ads? It's not like they expect people are going to run out and go to the store and buy Pepsi right then. It's because the long-term brand matters.
Yes. Yes. And I'm just like, yes, because there's a lot of inks, I think, between like B2C and like B2B, but at the end of the day, it's a freaking product, and you want to be top of mind that when they're ready to buy, you're the one that they want to buy from.
Yep.
So what advice would you give to early stage founders about how to have a positive relationship with their company website? And what I mean by that is actually looking at it every day without throwing up, and using it as a central part of their content distribution strategy to drive traffic, as they realize they are the walking ad. So that them being that personal brand, that they are the product and they are the walking ad when they're waving the flag around.
Yeah, and I mean, I see different founders do this different ways. So some are very much like that. Some are behind the scenes and they try and have their product and their company do all the talking for it. But yeah, I think it's just, if you try things, so these all can be rapid experiments. So you try different kinds of content, you see what picks up, and then you can look, if you have your site set up correctly, you can see metrics on where people go. Are more different kinds of folks coming? Where are they going to when they get on the site? Where did they come from? You can track all of that. So I think it starts to get this flywheel where positive begets more positive, and then you'll become incentivized. You'll see that it's working, and you'll just say, okay, I'm going to make the time to do this.
Yeah. Okay. We have a few minutes left. This last question here on B2B marketing and DevSecOps specifically. As you know, marketing boils down to know, like, and trust. And what strategies have worked best for you at each stage to connect with your ideal buyers? Specifically, in the know, how do you help new audience get to know you and your expertise? The like, what do you do to build a connection so they genuinely like what you stand for? Because if you keep on sending out resources and they're not actually, comprehending it, or spending the time with it, then how do you pivot there? And then the trust of the sale, what actions or content establish trust that solidifies that long-term relationship? What have you seen work for you?
Yeah, so I think know is what we've been talking about. Like is really about how you engage with them at the time that you're having a conversation. So first, are they going to get value out of it? Is this something that's unique to them? And then showing them that you go above and beyond to understand them and care about their problems. That builds like, and then of course it's a lot of the just relationship building stuff. So we try to form deep relationships with any of the folks that are working with us.
What questions do you usually ask to get that feedback so that these founders can also, learn to ask and not be scared to ask?
Yeah, people buy products to solve pain. So you have to understand what the pain is and why it matters to them. And it's all context dependent. So you can have an idea of what the pains are that you solve, but I wouldn't start with that. I wouldn't just go by listing, here's a bunch of pain that we solve. I would go asking what's top of mind for them. If they're spending time with you, there's obviously a reason they did that. So they thought you might be able to help them in some way. So I try and make that very personalized. And then I think trust is built, during the early phase of working with a company. They decided okay, this team really cares about my stuff. When I report issues, they're responsive, those kind of things. But you build it over time. Like any kind of trust, you just build it, and show that you're competent, you care about their success, and you will do anything to help them.
Yeah. And so and the last question here would be, to wrap up, where have you found that you've changed your way, specifically in DevSecOps, as things have changed in the market? Have you found yourself changing your approach slightly in because the stakeholders are very different. Every organization is different, how they're all set up, especially reorgs during pandemic and post-pandemic. So has there been a slight, from a market activity standpoint that you have observed that would be really helpful to get people up to speed as what that industry standard kind of looks like?
Yeah, I don't know about industry standard. I think in our case, we are continuously using what we learn to go and refine who we want to be talking to. So what kind of companies do and don't need us? What kind of folks do we want to be talking to at those companies? So I think it's personalized. It's going to be different for every single business. Any advice that I gave you about what works for us is going to be completely different than whoever's listening to this. But I think just obsessing over that, using every single data point that you get to say okay, that was a bad conversation. Why was that? Did we not explain it well? Was it not the right person? Was it not the right company? And then explicitly ask. I think people do want to be helpful, especially to early stage companies. So if you just say, hey, it seemed like we thought you might be interested in this. It seemed like you weren't. Why not? People are more open than you would think to giving that kind of feedback.
Yeah, totally. Okay, well, I know our time is up. Thank you so much for your time. And everyone needs to go to Resourcely. And I feel like we need to do a session just going through Resourcely.
Yeah. We love feedback. Thank you for the time.
Absolutely.